shopping today and I'll go to school tomorrow. First impressions are incredibly important.
Honey, you can make a wonderful first impression.
Brenda, how could you?
He was a jerk, okay?
I've made my choice and I choose me.
North South Connection podcast listeners, welcome to episode number 3 of 9021 No So. I am JT. Joining me is my now permanent co-host, Tim Capel. Tim, how are you?
I am good, JT. Trucking along here, episode 3 now, and you might say that with the guest we have tonight, a guy we know very well, that 9021 No So is the place to be here tonight.
You could say that. And Tim, I feel like you're my Dylan. Like you weren't originally going to be a full-time member of the show, and then by episode 2 it was obvious you needed to be here. And now here you are.
That's tough to live up to, you know. That's going to be a challenge for me.
Listen,
but
I just hope you don't finally get married, and then your fiance, and then your new
have it in
whichever way it
horribly
gets killed.
Sure.
By his or her father. So. Listen, if you're new to the show, we're chronologically going through the history of Beverly Hills 90210. It's our 3rd episode, so we're doing season 1, episode 3, and we'll be rotating in a 3rd guest each and every episode, or I guess third member in the chair. So this is, of course, the person that I started podcasting with over a decade ago. At this point, my co-host on the Place to Be podcast, and of course, the purveyor of many other shows and feeds and everything else out there going, Scott Criscuolo. Scott, how are you?
JT, sorry. I'm used to calling you JR. But I can still call you JR. JR, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for allowing me here on the ground floor of a show that I know you have definitely been talking about for the 10 years that we've been doing stuff, and I'm glad that it has been able to be executed. Tim, always a pleasure. I am quite pumped because I wanted to talk about this show forever in some capacity. And I know we've done it on other feeds, but I'm glad that we have a nice detailed show to talk about the nooks and crannies, the ins and outs, the cutoff jeans and white socks and women's shoes, which is a big 90s thing in this episode of this.
Sounds like another show you just named from the mid-90s out of Asbury Park. So, Scott, what we've been doing with our guest is if you just want to take like a legit 90 seconds or so, just to tell us your history with the show, Beverly Hills 90210.
I watched it the minute it debuted. We talked about it on another show on another feed just last week. I watched it the minute it started because it was different. It was kind of Fox's version of Dallas or Dynasty. Like they needed that cornerstone drama after having all the comedies in 1990, and this was perfect. It was Dallas and Dynasty. It was that big time drama for our demographic, and so I jumped in into the deep end, and I kind of faded out a little bit in the middle seasons and then came back at the end, admittedly, but I actually own all 10 seasons on DVD because the streaming is a little problematic rights-wise. So I wanted to make sure I had all the episodes with all the music and everything. And to me, I mean, obviously, if you go by genre, comedy, drama, to me, it's the best drama of the 90s. I don't want to say the best show because there's obviously a ton of others that can hit that category as well. But in terms of dramas,
now, have you go back and watch them all since you dipped out in the middle? Okay, so you've seen them all. You're all caught up.
I've seen them all. Yep.
All right, and it's funny because as we've talked about, even though I'm doing the show, the early ones are kind of my dark spot a little bit because I did not watch from the beginning and haven't seen them as much. So that's why you're here and Tim's here to help fill in those blanks. So, all right, so lifelong fans, good to have you here, of course, as always. So we're going to dive into season 1, episode 3. Every Dream Has Its Price tag, aired October 18th, 1990. And we have a big debut coming later that we'll talk about. And also of note, I guess we'll just call it out now, there is no Tori Spelling and no Douglas Emerson in this episode. Of course, that is Donna Martin and Scott Scanlon, both missing in episode 3 here. So call that out of the way.
Go ahead and put them at the bottom of our character rankings for this one, huh? Maybe Donna below Scott, just because she's still not even a character yet.
Donna's been at the bottom of mine since the start.
And I find it funny
rough
too.
Start.
I find it funny too because Donna would fit. You would think Donna, the way she is in these early episodes and even these early 2 seasons, would fit this theme.
Yes.
Instead of where other people were, which we'll get into. But I was very surprised Donna was not in this episode.
Yeah. She very much feels like an extra with a name now.
They just took an extra and put her in the
but she's just like there for screen time and credits more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think she got a lot of crap for that early, and I think her dad got a lot of crap for that early on as well. That she got thrown in there because of her last name, and I think that was the feeling the first 7 or 8 episodes of this season. As you guys will continue on, I think that's the case. But by the middle of season 1, she ended up kind of settling in, I think.
All right.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see when we get to I hesitate to say strong Donna episode, but just one where she has more presence. So we'll see.
All right, well, we're without her tonight, which is fine because we got a lot going on. So what we usually do here, if you're new, we kind of just give an outline, really, of the episode. And when I say that, it's not scene by scene. It's really just my notes of watching the episode, things that jumped out at me. Scott and Tim, feel free to jump in where you want. And then at the end of the episode, we'll do a bunch of awards and kind of ranks and stuff like that. So I thought the opening was pretty good. It's Brenda feeling relatable. She's kind of prepping a speech to her mom. She wants to get the okay to go horseback riding with her friends. She's kind of, talking it out to herself. And we do find out here that the Walshes still, 3 episodes in, struggling to keep up financially. So that continues to be a trope, Tim, that we've talked about the first 2 episodes here.
Yeah, and I think that's just another reminder of, though they have kind of made it, so to speak, in the middle class sense, they've now moved from the Midwest out to Beverly Hills. They are not exactly keeping up with the Joneses. Just telling us there's this contrast here between the Walshes and some of the other families we're going to see, particularly in this episode. And it's important to establish that in the early goings of this series, and particularly the storyline we're going to be presented with here.
And Scott, it's not that they're poor, right? It's more that they were probably Minneapolis rich, but they get here and they're like a tier down, upper mid class more.
Yeah, no, they definitely they definitely had to catch up. Just because Jim got the job out of the gate doesn't mean he's a zillionaire, as he says, zillionaire out of the gate. And their house is nice, but although obviously the house would change the inside, the outside really wouldn't, but the inside changed considerably as we get to season 2.
Kind of tracking that as we go.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's like when Happy Days went from season 1 to season where the camera shots got wider and they kind of accentuated the fact that it was a bigger house. And but they definitely, I think, made a point that the Walshes are very modest. They're modest people from the Midwest. They're not the Taylors. They're not the Martins. So they're trying to live within their means, but at the moment they haven't caught up fiscally to the lifestyle. So you're right. They're not keeping up with the Joneses because they can't make it to the Joneses until Jim starts really settling into the gig. So you definitely see them kind of, they're the tortoise and that society is the hare. They're trying to catch up, but early on they're not quite there yet, and they're uncomfortable about it too.
Well, and this episode in particular is going to touch on classism much more directly than certainly some of the more one and done episodes of the show do. You get into that with the C plot with the Walshes. You literally see Jim at work, and he's working very hard, and Cindy's trying to hold it down on the home front and having struggles of her own, mixed in with the A plot, which kind of belongs to Brenda. I would call this a Brenda episode.
Definitely. Yeah,
sure.
Definitely.
Unless you want to focus on Cindy's gardening. That's in here. And did you expect her to say she was gardening to save money? I thought she was going to be an actual farming a little bit, make it, plants some cucumber plants, some tomato plants out there to try and help support the family. But it looks like she's just kind of.
Or maybe it's just a hobby for her. She just something she enjoys doing. But yeah, it's like presented as something she has to do because it's a hardship.
So we also get a lot of focus continuing on Brenda's jealousy. Like she watches Kelly and another girl talking about hats and convertibles. And then what I thought was one of the funnier moments of the episode was Cindy and the Walshes getting a cleaning lady foisted on them.
Yes.
As you know, Cindy's obviously been struggling with the change. She's feeling very alone. She's out there gardening, and this cleaning lady comes up and speaks Spanish only. So they're having a hard time connecting. And she just comes in and starts cleaning. So we'll find out in a little bit why that happened. But did you, Scott, think this was? I thought it was pretty funny when she just came up and was like, "Yep, okay, see you inside," and just goes inside and starts cleaning the house.
Yeah, it is. But it's a perfect example of, again, what Tim was talking about. That there's no maids in Minneapolis unless you're, I don't know, maybe the mayor or whatever. So obviously Cindy accustomed to doing her own thing. So and the fact that she just walks up randomly, "Hi, I'm going to clean." Oh, okay, cool. It's like very, very, very for that moment. But Cindy definitely is not getting accustomed to the fact that she needs people to do this environment is that she needs people to do things for her. And obviously this situation doesn't totally last long, but it was definitely a trope for these early episodes of the Walshes kind of trying to fit into the life.
Yeah, and she obviously feels like she wants to add some value, and now here's another thing being kind of taken from her. So she's already bored. She already feels kind of out of place. Her friends aren't there. Jim's bringing the money, and the kids are in school.
Yeah.
And now here's a cleaning lady out of nowhere to even take that from her, cleaning the house. So it's kind of like, all right, well, what the fuck am I going to do now?
And it's funny, they even point out the difference between this and their former lifestyle in Minnesota. Brenda says something like, "Oh, we had a maid back then," or Jim says it, and Cindy's like, "Well, that was a lot different. That was a lady who came for a few hours, like once a week," and just kind of illustrating the difference between that and this, which is apparently like a full-time housekeeper who's there every day.
There's like a cleaning lady, and then there's like Alice from the Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
Fucking lives there, right?
I mean, she all but lives there. Yeah, right. I mean, she's cooking for them, she's cleaning for them, just doing everything. And Cindy is just kind of overwhelmed. You've got the language barrier too, which all of this is like kind of not a good look for Jim or Cindy and their communication skills, but I don't know. This is back in the early days when the Walshes get actual storylines. So we'll see if this is the beginning of more friction, perhaps, between the two of them.
We also get some early signs of Brenda being into theater here. So that's kind of a early tracker to watch Tim, something we'll be seeing as we go. I did mark out that the DJ is still with us. I'm curious how long he lasts.
That's true.
Scott, if you enjoy that guy. But Tim and I have enjoyed him greatly over 3 episodes here.
Yeah, he's pretty funny.
Through the school day.
Yeah, he's pretty funny.
Yeah, I'm going to be sad when David gets his job.
Yes, that's right. Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah, so it does stick around. Okay, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah. All right, so we get Brandon shows up now. He's job hunting, old school, pulling little tabs off the papers on the bulletin board. So we'll kind of continue the story of the Walshes needing some scratch here because Brandon needs to find a job if he wants some cash to hang with the big boys.
Notice that Brandon has to get a job, but Brenda doesn't. So this is one of those.
And meanwhile, Brandon is not as much at the moment into fitting into the life as Brenda is. Yet Brandon's the one that wants the money, and Brenda's looking to kind of. It fits very well with this episode because it is kind of a strange dichotomy that you have Brandon who's just like, hey, I'm here, fuck it, I'm gonna get a job, and Brenda's like, I need to be part of the know, but I'm not gonna work.
And she kind of says it at some point too, doesn't she? Like, I'm basically too busy for a job. Like, that's kind of what she says, right, at one point.
Yeah. And she's sort of making the point or the argument that part of this lifestyle that she finds so aspirational certainly does not include young teenage girls working, right? So it's sort of like she looks at Kelly, she looks at this girl Tiffany, who's introduced in this episode. They're not holding down jobs. She wants to be like them. She just thinks that she just has a different set of expectations, I think.
Correct.
And
Yep.
the whole deal with Brandon, it just comes a lot more naturally or effortlessly to him. But and the show hasn't gotten into this. We're going to see a bit of a double standard when it comes to the Walshes and their treatment of Brandon versus Brenda over the seasons, I think.
Yes.
There's kind of not the same pressure on Brenda, for example, to get the job. But when it comes to, some disciplinary issues, I don't know. We'll get into it. And it kind of starts this episode, I think.
Big time. That's a huge thing for me in one of our categories. Huge thing for me.
So, Tim, I love, too, that one of our favorite pairings is rolling on. So we get Steve and David randomly hanging out at the store.
We do.
I love that.
I love how they all happen to be there. Like, did they all go at the same time? It didn't feel that way.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, certainly
strange.
Brenda and Kelly and
Right.
and their Tiffany, but I don't know if David and Steve followed them there. Or, it is funny how they all just wind up in the same place.
One place.
Fantastic.
There's the beach in the last episode. It's a store in this one. So.
And Steve gets a killer line when he sees Tiffany. He goes, "Hey, Tiff, how's the waterbed?"
How's the waterbed? That's fucking amazing. That's so Steve.
Steve has been great with the one-liner so far, for sure.
Steve has been my when I first watched it, definitely when I rewatched, Steve was like my season 1 MVP. While the other characters, I felt like, because in my opinion, I'll say it here too, for this episode, I feel like everybody else is still trying to get their feet wet as to what they're going to be, where they are in this ensemble. But Ian Ziering knew what and who Steve Sanders was. And that was it.
He gets it. Yeah,
he got
gets
it immediately.
You can tell.
He's the fucking.
And he already showed some of the reasons for empathy too, right, Tim? Like we dove into that in a previous episode where he's already got, Scott, to your point, like the one-liners down, kind of the bad boy stuff down, like all of that. Not even bad boy, preppy bad boy, right? He's got to get that down. And then we've already seen him start to show his little bit of mommy issues in that episode with Samantha. So that's already kind of played in too. So I think you're right, Scott. Like I think he came in with that idea fully formed.
Yep.
And he's probably the one that feels almost the closest to what he'll always be, at least until he matures and progresses. Yeah. But for most of the run.
And that's why I think him and David were the best buddy cop pair to start. Like David, I don't think would have he wouldn't have fit with Brandon because Brandon's is sort of a newbie as well, even though he's a year behind. They're both newbies. David's a newbie at the school. Brandon's a newbie, period. So they wouldn't have fit well. David and Dylan would have been ridiculous. Right. And but not like David and Steve is funny ridiculous. David and Dylan would have been illogically ridiculous.
Steve, it's like you wouldn't expect him to be friends with this nerd, but they keep kind of getting forced to each other.
Yeah.
And now they're kind of, it's like a Zach and Screech setup, right? I mean, that's
they complement each other.
Yeah, they absolutely do. They absolutely do.
So we get more Steve Kelly conflict, which has been one of our conflicts from episode 1. We find out that Kelly and Tiffany warred over Steve, and Tiffany, I guess, basically, he knew Kelly liked him or stole him from Kelly. So that there's some underlying issues between Kelly and Tiff, even though they're kind of played up as friends here. And we start to learn more about the Kelly-Steve romance that happened prior to the show beginning.
Yes, and we learned that was a source of the falling out between Kelly and Tiffany, which is communicated to us not by Donna, who, again, we said we would expect to be in this episode, but one of these random extras, one of those random Kelly friends who, I don't know, maybe she's one of those girls we saw in the pilot, Kathy or Michelle or whatever those characters were. But it's just so funny how you get this information kind of third hand from these random characters.
Right.
And like Kelly is sort of like not very forthcoming about the nature of their relationship or even like how they had these conflicts in the past. She just tells Brenda, Tiffany's a little bit too wild, but it seems like she's settled down. They're reconciling. It's a very teenagery thing to do. I thought that was pretty like kind of true to life, that these things sort of happen. How people just come in and out of your life at that age. And it's just kind of a very volatile time socially.
I agree.
I love Jim has a great line. So we cut to his office. Tim, you mentioned this earlier. He's busy at work. He goes, "I got 10 Ks flying," which of course is form you fill out for corporate financial statements or whatever. But it's just like a weird insider term. Like, who the fuck would even really know? Like, anyone watching the show is probably not gonna understand what the hell he's talking about. But it was really funny. So he's all stressed out at work, and then we kind of get this twist where Brenda, who's, we got the theater stuff going on. She's into Les Miserables in class, and it's kind of playing out right now. Like, she's kind of become the main character. She's desperate for clothes and feels like, maybe there's an end to the means to an end of this whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Well, I guess things really escalate here where we see Tiffany in the dressing room and tries on. And I had this written down for 90s fashion, a great category that I enjoy looking out for. Just this floral print dress that I think every girl had in the early 90s. But she steals that bad boy, stuffs it in her bag, and it's funny because later on, she and Brenda have some one-on-one time, and she's even asking Brenda, and they're talking directly about stealing. And Tiffany is like, "Oh, I would never do that," and Brenda's like, "Me neither." So it's like she's both a thief and a compulsive liar. This Tiffany, she's got her share of issues. And the episode is not shy about telling us.
Yeah, I feel like that outfit was very Blossom.
Yeah, I kind of thought the same.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I like it's a good example. Tiffany, to me, is a microcosm of the kind of people that Brenda, particularly Brenda and Brandon, run into throughout season 1.
Mm-hmm.
Like the prototypical Beverly Hills kid. What most, and what's funny is most of the issues involve boredom. Like, I'm a bored rich kid, so I need some excitement, so I'm going to break the law.
And absentee parents.
And parents that are off travailing somewhere. That is such, I don't want to say it's a trope, because it's actually a solid foundation character build for this first season, where kind of like Smallville or any superhero show where you have a villain of the week. 90210, this first season, had like misunderstood kid of the week, whereas Dylan was like the poster child for that in the beginning, and then he settles in. We know his backstory, but Tiffany is like that typical, every week we're going to find one kid that
right. The first episode. Yeah, the first episode, Tim was what's her name?
Marianne Moore.
Marianne Moore.
Yep.
I'm glad you brought her up, because I kind of thought this was an opportunity to bring her back.
Yeah.
Like, this character, Tiffany, just as easily could have been Marianne.
Yeah, Marianne didn't have these flaws, though. She was too perfect.
No, but I don't know. It would have taken some tweaking to that pilot, just to maybe write her a little bit differently, and to have, this friendship, this old friendship with Kelly. But it's not that much of a stretch, I felt like. Style wise, I feel like she kind of resembled Marianne.
Oh, she did. They definitely felt similar. It wouldn't shock me if that was the intent, but they couldn't get the actress or something. Like, sure. I don't know. Like, it doesn't feel that far off. And of course, episode 2, we had the surfers and all that, to Scott's point. So we're kind of running into the locals of the week. David is full on tech geek now. So he's got the video camera, which is pretty early adopter. My dad got his, I think, in like, I don't know, 88, I think is when our movies kind of first fire up. So David's pretty early on. He's got it at school. And then I think we get one of our most hachi-machi moments outside of Marianne and Brandon in the hot tub. We get Tiffany basically stripping for him.
Right.
Yeah.
At school, like on campus. She goes down to like her sports bra.
Yeah.
Very hachi-machi.
Young David Silver falls out.
Yeah, he's not taping over that.
No.
But yeah, she's all in.
Yep. That was funny.
So then we go to that Walsh house. Cindy's working on her issues with Anna, the cleaning lady. She's trying to understand what the hell she's saying. Obviously, we get the big language barrier. She can't understand shit. But it's almost good because it's like Cindy getting to talk it out, what's in her head.
Yeah.
Kind of working. And then we get another really funny moment where Tiffany, Brenda says, "Oh, this is my mom, Cindy." And Tiffany goes, "Which one?"
Right.
Cindy, because they're both on their knees kind of cleaning together as Cindy's talking to her. So I thought that was actually a really funny line. And Cindy's face is really good.
And she's just greeted with the backside of both these women as she walks in with Brenda. That is a pretty funny scene.
Yeah.
She's also like oddly rude to Cindy without meaning to be. Like, it just goes to show that typical Beverly Hills thing. She's just doesn't have a relationship with adults and doesn't like have this kind of it doesn't feel like she has to look up to them as elders even. It's just sort of like, oh, you're just another person, and assuming she's almost like a peer to Brenda, I think, is the way that she's talking to her. Because she just has no other example.
She's just the help.
Yep.
So Brandon gets his job, which the restaurant was called Nitro, right?
No, the restaurant was called Good. Good.
Well, it's weird. They call it Nitro.
Nitro was the store.
I thought they called the restaurant Nitro too. I was so confused. I haven't been both of them.
No, I thought the restaurant was Looks Good. Look Good. It was on Brandon's shirt at the end of the episode.
Yeah, that's what it said on the menu.
They definitely call it Nitro at some point.
They did. They do.
I think they maybe got mixed up with.
Yeah, that might have been a script glitch or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think it was.
Yeah.
I don't think we're mixed up. I think the show's mixed up.
I think the show. Yeah.
All right, so we'll call it Look Good. Just a stupid name. But he's hired there, and he gets there 15 minutes early, and he gets bitched out for being early, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
This lady already seems super annoying, the boss.
Oh, yeah, totally. She also looks like she's almost wearing, like, lingerie. Just as her kind of daytime attire. It's very unprofessional looking for a, as she refers to herself, restaurateur. I don't know. You just got a whole weird vibe from this whole.
Which is funny because during the interview she had on, and if I may, JR, so this is your show. This I'm referring to one of your shows. She had something like she had that brown blazer with the hat. Like she looked like Elaine.
Right.
From like that looked like an Elaine outfit. And then Brandon shows up for her first day and she looks like she is about to bang the shit out of him. Like it's very very strange.
So that I was going to bring that up because I'm curious if that really feels that way, or is it because we know there's a trend of Brandon with older women that every time he's around one, it feels that way. Like Tim, we called this out in episode 1, right? Where he's with the Blaze like teacher that is like the lead of the Blaze or whatever. And it felt that way. We called it out. So like, is it there, or are we just like kind of picking it up because we know Brandon with older women is a thing, or are they doing it subtly because it seems it?
Well, Steve makes a point to say it when they're later in the later scene after he gets the job. Steve pretty much calls it out. So, and then as we see over the coming seasons, Brandon does pretty much. It does seem like that's a thing. Like Brandon kind of settles into these.
Yeah, cougars.
Unique, really. Yeah, he definitely is in the wild hunting the cougars. Definitely.
All right, so then we finally get Tiffany getting busted at the store at Nitro.
Yes.
And I love the two workers. Like, I feel like this would never really happen. I feel like they'd get security to come get her, but like the two random store workers come up and like, you're really in trouble now.
Yeah, they just restrained them physically.
Like, it felt a little like, I don't know, maybe that was how it was in 1990, but I feel like these days you're not fucking with a potential thief or anything. You're telling, you don't give a shit enough, honestly.
Yeah, that was a bit
tell
much.
Security, get out of the way, right?
Yeah, pretty funny.
I mean, unless they are like co-owners of this store, they're probably not getting paid enough to physically restrain them.
So, all right, so we get some trouble there. Tiffany's in trouble and Brenda's with her. Then we go to this weird scene. I thought this was the most out of place scene. We get Jim and Cindy on the couch, and Jim looks so creepy. And he's just like sitting quietly in silence.
Right.
He might be like Rotella, Scott, like laying on a couch or something. Like this is look he had on his face. It was so weird.
Yeah.
And then Cindy kind of makes the move on him. And then Cindy says Jim has shifty bedroom. Like this just felt so out of place. Like I don't know why we needed this scene.
Well, it was funny the way they transitioned, because that's one of my favorite quotes is when Cindy goes, Tiffany has shifty eyes, and then Jim goes, well, your parents thought I had shifty eyes, and then they go the tone changes literally on a dime. Like they're talking about the situation with Brenda and this mysterious friend, and all of a sudden Carol well, that's her real name. Cindy turns and goes, shifty bedroom eyes. And we're like, wow. And the way Jim's lying on the couch, you're like, what the fuck's about
It
to
was
happen?
so weird.
It's just very
Right.
The tone literally shifted on a dime. It was so bizarre.
And the staging of this whole scene is very strange. Like they're in a room of the house that we haven't really seen before, and is not like a, when I think about this show, I don't think about people lounging in their den of Castle Walsh for as long as this goes on. Like they're just sort of sitting there, nothing's happening. They're having drinks. It's like the end of the day, they're just relaxing, but it's just, what are they doing? Like what, why are they just sort of, why would they not be in bed or in the living room watching TV or something? It's just, or even in the kitchen, which is a much better setting, just cinematically for this show. It's just so strange the way they set this up from a televisual standpoint to me.
It was weird. Yeah, I didn't.
Very weird.
Because then, like, Brandon comes in and like he lays down on the entire couch. Like Jim sort of scoots him over, but then Cindy is like sitting on the floor, and you're just like, what is going on with this staging? Like, who directed this?
Yeah, it was odd, and he just looked weird. He looked creepy. I didn't need to know what a shifty bedroom was.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so we're backstage here in the store in Nitro, and Tiffany is talking to Brenda, and she's going hard on the Svengali to her, right? I stole it for you because I knew you really wanted to steal, but you wouldn't do it, yourself. And Brenda's like, "Fuck you! You did it for you, kid, not me, not for me." So Tiffany's really trying to bring Brenda back around here on her and saying like, "Look, I'm not a thief. I did this for the right reason, et cetera, et cetera." So they're there. We also then have Jim getting a shipment in of a tennis windbreaker because Cindy thinks it's her. Mm-hmm. And so she's all excited. She thinks she's getting a gift, and Jim's like, "Yeah, sorry." But so did Jim order this online? Like, if it feels like he's an early adopter. Like, where did he get this thing? He called and ordered it?
I think he just picked it up like on his way home, and it was.
But it was in a box, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was just packaged kind of elaborately because.
Yeah, like why would you box your own thing? That's
odd.
I just got the sense he picked it up, and they boxed it for him because it's Beverly Hills sort of deal.
Yeah, they don't use
maybe.
things.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I'm not saying that was the thing, but maybe the show is trying to act like it was.
His assistant picked it up for him.
Yeah.
So he's got that tennis windbreaker. We'll see it in a minute.
And Cindy's pissed because she's like,
she's like,
thought it was a gift for her. Jumped to some conclusions there, and he's like, "Oh, I'm in trouble," and it's, I don't know, it just feels like there's some very unspoken strife here between the two of them.
Well, Cindy feels lonely. I mean, she's clearly lonely. Like that's what all this is. Right? She's stuck in this new world with no one else to talk to. Besides, doesn't understand what she's saying. We meet the Nitro owner as he comes back to confront Tiffany and Brenda, and his mullet is out of control.
Oh, it's epic. That's award-winning. That's award-winning mullet right there. That might be best 90s at that point.
Yeah, so they basically talk their way out of it, right? And they get out of this thing now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you knew that had to happen.
Right.
If there was any legal issues from that point of the episode on, it would have just gotten way too cumbersome. It was a good plot point to get them out of it because it was less about the act and more about the post act aftermath. So
and it makes very clear that Tiffany is not stealing because she can't afford these items. She more than can afford them. She just is choosing to do because of the thrill of it, and she has some psychological problems.
Speaking of psychological problems, we get Jim and Cindy power walking, and Jim's in his light blue windbreaker that he bought. Quite the scene there. Then we also get Kelly on the phone with Brenda, and this is another iconic moment. This is from the open, right, where she rolls over. She's on the phone and rolls over on the bed. So just kind of made note of that. That's
on a side note, actually, before we get back to the power walking, I also noticed, talking about Minnesota, that less and less we see a lot of it here at season 1, but by the time when you guys get to season 2, I think you're going to see less and less of their Minnesota-ness
Yeah.
Like, for instance, Cindy's power walking with a Vikings t-shirt on. Like, that kind of stuff you won't see as much over time. Like the Minnesota thing slowly, like, like Brandon names the car Mondale, and like you'll slowly see the Minnesota out of them little by little as the show progresses. But this season,
I'm curious to see too if it's like a natural evolution or if it feels forced.
Yeah.
Does it just kind of evolve?
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So then Brandon's in the kitchen, and he finds out basically all the guys working back there with him, because that's where his job is. He thought he was gonna be a waiter, but he's really just a dishwasher and a bitch boy around the restaurant. And he finds out that all the guys who are pretty much all minorities around him are getting treated like shit and paid like shit. So he's a bleeding heart, of course. We've picked that up already for him. And he wants to fight for these guys that are working in the kitchen. So that'll play
sort
out.
of.
Right.
Sort of. He, I don't know, primarily sort of goes to bat for himself, because he kind of like, he makes a big scene, like he rage quits his job, but on the way out pulls up a chair next to Dylan. So I don't know, you sort of can't storm out.
Well, it's a little bit later. We're not there yet.
Yeah. Okay. Very good.
This is just him, I think, in the back in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Finding
Chat
it out.
with his coworkers.
All right. So Cindy's pissed, and she's taking her misery out on Brenda. And I feel like this was a real Larry David situation for Brenda. She didn't really do anything wrong. She completely got positioned here, but everyone's kind of blaming her. And now she's making it worse by getting so defensive about it and almost being like, fine, fuck you, I did do it, because she wants to, like, she's so mad that people are blaming her over it.
Right.
And this is our first big Cindy Brenda blowout, where they both are pissed about other things and they're taking it out on each other, right? Like, Cindy's clearly mad at herself and her life. Brenda's clearly jealous of everything going on, and now they're just like unloading on each other.
Yeah, I thought that this argument between Brenda and Cindy was like way more emotional and better acted than it really had to be for the show.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Like it's genuinely pretty good. I mean, this is a very low stakes episode, but this is, I mean, I'll just go ahead and say I had this down as a standout moment, probably best moment from the episode. Just this huge meltdown between mother and daughter here. And I mean, you're not going to see a whole lot. You're not going to see like Carol Potter get a whole lot to chew on, I feel like, in this series, just as an actor. And this was pretty solid stuff from her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a feeling you'll see a lot of, sadly, you'll see less Carol Potter and more James Eckhouse as the show progresses. He gets more standout than she does. Like, she'll have the episode with the ex-boyfriend and all that. I know you guys will get there, but you definitely, I agree with you 100%, Tim, that Jim ends up being the standout parent, which sucks because Cindy's kind of like the cushion that wants to kind of be, but right now, yeah, she's got nothing. Everybody else has something but her. Jim's got the job. Brenda's got school. Brandon's got school and a job, and Cindy's just standing there in the kitchen holding the bag.
She could go get a fucking job, but we'll see. We'll see how that plays out.
Well, yeah, that too.
I mean, that's a little part of this, right?
Right.
All right. So, and as this is going on too, I like Tiffany's, we mentioned earlier, another good way to kind of create a heel outside of the main cast to add some adversaries. We're trying not to make anyone in the main cast too much of a bad person in this, right? So they keep bringing in these outsiders to add that conflict in. So she's kind of dropping theology here, kind of how things aren't what they seem when she's talking to Brenda at the pool. But it's clear she's just desperate for a friend, right? She's just desperate for someone who gives a shit at any level, family or friend. She seems very, again, loneliness seems to be a theme in this one. But she's really kind of dishing it to Brenda here.
This
Which is
pool,
funny because she's sitting around. I was just saying, Tim, she's sitting at this pool with all these fucking jacked up dudes just sitting around as eye candy, and she literally does not care. She might as well be alone. I think that was great. I was thinking about kicking that around as my best scene.
Yep.
Like, here's a girl who literally has everything. Pool. She's hot. She's got a great body. She's got all these fucking dudes standing around, and she literally could be by herself, and she could feel like she's totally alone, even when technically she's not. Great scene.
Yeah, I had that one too. Solid runner-up for me. Just it almost looks like something out of one of those sort of dark 80s teen dramedies, not like a straight up slapstick comedy
Right.
type.
Yep.
But maybe in one of the, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example, and I can't right now, but it feels like, again, this is that we're on the cusp of the 90s, really, and this is one of those scenes that still feels a little bit more 80s to me.
My So-Called Life.
Well, that'll be very 90s.
Yeah. I don't know why I thought of that.
Gosh, I want to rewatch that someday. But in any case, yeah, I really like this scene too. Just it had a lot going for us, and the random dudes who are so like conspicuous, just laying there by the pool that Brenda even has to ask, who are these guys?
Right.
And Tiffany's like, they're just dudes.
Young boys.
Yeah.
All right, so this is the scene, Tim, that you mentioned earlier, which is a really good one too. Dylan's at the restaurant. He's kind of shitting on everything. He pisses off the boss, and that's when they find out that the crew's not even getting minimum wage. Brandon does, and then he blows out the boss. He says, "I'm an investigative reporter," which is great.
That's awesome.
And he quits on the spot. He says, "I'm going to expose your restaurant and tell the world that you're paying, you're not even paying these guys the minimum wage to work in your kitchen. You take advantage of the minorities that are working here, and I'm gonna expose it." And then he sits down with Dylan, and they kind of start to eat, and they trash the boss some more, and then walk off. I thought it was a pretty good part of the episode too.
I thought it was a great beeline. That Brand, it's going to be Brandon's kind of causes. One of the many causes he jumps on over time. And it establishes that Brandon is going to fight for what he believes in, regardless of the landscape. Like, we'll always know that Brandon's the one who doesn't except for the occasional moment, he doesn't let the fact that he's in this different environment affect him. He's still going to be Brandon Walsh, regardless of where he is. And I think this episode, he could have just settled in and just let the minorities get made fun of or whatever and treat it like shit. And instead, he's going to be like, no, if I was in some place in St. Paul, same thing. And I think that's how we look at Brandon over these first couple seasons before, we see his kind of weaknesses or faults. But Brandon seems to be the do no wrong character of the early episodes.
And, this can come off as probably a bit sanctimonious today, especially you think about, like, try to imagine this is a real life 16-year-old, like, getting in the face of some, fancy restaurant owner over these improprieties. Like, I don't know. But it is a very Brandon Walsh thing to do. He is, as we're going to see, like, kind of a crusader. And I almost feel like there could be another category, but I don't know exactly what to call it, like Brandon blow-ups or something, just the way that he, is not afraid to really get in somebody's face over an issue that's important to him.
Correct. I agree.
All right, and then we get, I would argue, one of the biggest moments so far, Tim, since we've been doing the show. Dylan says, "I know a place we can go and get some good food." And he brings Brandon to the Peach Pit, the debut of the Peach Pit. And right on the spot, he meets the owner, Nat Basuccio. And Nat gives Brandon a job. He's kind of been reluctant to ever hire anyone, but he says, "You know what? I could really use some help. You seem like a good guy. Dylan vouches for you. You're good with me." So a pretty big moment, Scott, with the arrival of the Peach Pit and the debut of Nat.
Yeah, adding Nat was huge because we obviously have a bunch of kids with flawed parents of various degrees. We obviously not and let me phrase, well, for the most part, Jim and Cindy aren't flawed. They're just preoccupied with fitting into life. But Dylan,
the thing is, Jim can't be the father figure to everyone, right?
Correct. No,
it's kind of where you're going. So now we need another one.
Yeah, we need a father figure that's been on the streets kind of thing. And Nat is that guy. And I think that this was a great addition to the cast. Joey Tata, great addition to the cast because it kind of gives them the street, Jim's going to give the fatherly advice. Nat's going to kind of give the street advice that these kids may need when they're kind of shocked out of their, cushy life. So great addition to the cast here. Huge.
Yeah, and he serves an important role too of just showing the viewers that maybe not all of the native adults of Los Angeles are like total pieces of shit. Like,
yeah, no, you're exactly right, Tim.
And that just, that just kind of piggybacks on what you just said, Scott, which is the only real examples we've had of adults who are like decent role models are transplants in the form of the Walshes, because we haven't yet met all of the parents, and when we do, it's like not a very good scene. For as much as they lean on these one and done guest star type characters to do the whole absentee parent thing, there's enough characters just within our main cast who have that issue. And it's interesting that they go to that well as much as they do with these one and done characters, when you've got Steve, whose mom kind of sucks and his dad's not in the picture, Dylan with both his parents being gone, Kelly's home life is a shit show, which we'll get to. David, we don't know that much about. I guess, I mean, kind of the best example is going to be Mel Silver, which is not saying a ton. So you kind of needed somebody who was more wholesome.
I mean, Mr. Martin. He's
Mr. Martin.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Donna's dad.
Donna's dad's like maybe number 2 with the dad department behind Jim.
Yeah, but her mom super sucks, so they kind of cancel each other out. But yeah, that to your point, that is probably the best dad on the show, other than Jim, would be Dr. Martin.
Right.
But yeah, as far as like regulars, you sort of needed that in Nat. So it's not like he's going to be in every episode, but
I'd be curious how many. Maybe we should track him. How many is it?
Maybe, because he will get added to the main credits eventually. It takes a while, but eventually they just, instead of doing the also starring Joey Tata, they stick him in the opening credits. So I don't know. Maybe it is. He's going to be one that you can't really do rankings for, right? Because it's not like he gets a lot of dynamic plot stuff.
Right.
I got to be honest. I don't think he hits the opening credits till season.
It's a while.
7, maybe?
Yeah.
8? No, I don't think it's any earlier than 7, to be honest. It might be when Jim and Cindy aren't on as much anymore.
Yeah, because you got to figure they had shaved off some regulars, so
yeah, I would say it's probably season 7.
Yeah, I think it's a bit. So we'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
So kind of along these lines, Cindy gives Tiffany the little pep talk, some life lessons. It kind of sets that trope too of her being the team mom to all these people that come through. So she gets a little mom time with Cindy and fixes things. She basically tells her the truth, right? Brenda didn't steal, I stole it. And the bag you found was mine. I hid it in the house. It wasn't her. And then that leads to Brenda doing her paper, kind of tying everything together well about Les Mis, and explains the needs to fit in, the desperation behind stealing, and kind of uses her experience to nail the paper.
And both the Walsh children are genius writers, we should point out, at this stage.
Yes, very early on. In different ways, different avenues, but indeed, yes.
All right, so then we get Jim with a big dad joke to close it out, where Brenda talks about the hunger to fit in. He says, what about, I'm actually hungry. I want some food. That wraps us up. So I think all in all, like, this was another pretty good episode. I thought it was a step back from the first two. It had good storytelling. The learnings are there. And we got a lot of stuff that'll drive future action and story. Less of the supporting cast, which I thought hurt it. It was a lot more Walsh-centric this week. So we, very little Steve and David, no Donna, which I guess is okay, but a lot less Kelly, like barely any Kelly. Little bit of Dylan in his overalls at the restaurant. So again, I thought this one had some good scenes, like individual scenes we've made note of a few times, but I think all in all, it felt like it was just a notch behind what we've watched him so far.
Yeah, I'm with you there. We talked about, and we're sort of grateful, I think, that the pilot was not as Walsh-centric as we were thinking it would be going in. But that being said, the show as a whole, I think, has been pretty Walsh-centric, where you kind of are alternating your early episodes between a Brandon episode, a Brenda episode, a Brandon episode, a Brenda. So I mean, Brenda's come up in the rotation, I figure, and that's fine. I don't think this is weaker because it's a Brenda episode. I think it's just sort of working through those kinks of the, the early season, the first season sort of like show figuring it out type things. And this is, like a lot of those first season episodes, very episodic, very kind of gets out of here fast, gives us some life lessons, and then moves on. Like introduces some characters we'll never see again, that whole thing. But we do get Nat, so that's pretty important. So it's not completely without merit, but I would agree a little bit weaker in comparison to what we've seen so far. But only our third episode here. I mean, fourth, depending on how you're counting the pilot. We're still kind of humming along, I think.
And to me, it means this show's hanging in, right? Because we haven't seen, like, it hasn't bottomed out 3 in. It's, it's still chugging along. We're right around the same spot. So that's good. We're showing some consistency.
Exactly.
Yep.
All right, let's do some awards, guys. We'll wrap things up here. So best scene of the episode for me was the Brenda and Cindy blowout.
Yep, I said same.
Yeah, I originally had right before when Cindy threw the shade, because you're not sure where that's going. You figured she would have, but when they're in the parking lot and Brenda looks for Cindy's approval and Cindy goes, "Let's just go home." You're like, "Oh, shade," which was a prelude to the fight, to the scene after you guys are talking about. So those are my 1-2s: the shade throwing in the parking lot leading to the argument.
All right. Most important scenes. So I had 2 of them here, and this generally is a category meaning like important to the future of the show, right? So like last episode was Dylan's debut, and what is going to set the road ahead for us. So I had 2 things. One is Jim bailing out Brenda right out of its own spot.
Yep.
And then Brandon getting hired at the Peach Pit obviously is a huge one.
I would back both of those up. I had the exact same thing, which is, I mean, I phrased it as Jim getting a distressing phone call about Brenda, while he and Cindy are lounging in their murder den. I think that's pretty pivotal, like foreshadowing. That's going to be a pattern for sure. And yeah, I mean, Brandon working out at the Peach Pit is obviously huge too. So right there with you.
Yeah, I had Brandon and Tiffany actually getting caught, because that's just a typical Brenda, like trying to fit in and ends up almost fucking herself in the end.
Yeah.
And the debut of Nat. I mean, that's which is combo of which kind of goes
right. It's the same thing.
Same lines.
It not only does it intro Nat, but the Peach Pit gets introed, which ends up becoming one of the most central buildings of the show. So that's huge too.
All right, most 90s, a lot of options as always. 2 of the second me were Jim's light blue windbreaker suit and the Nitro store owner's perm mullet.
I went with the perm mullet. I went with Tiffany, who at one point had on, she had on the short denim shorts and the black boots, which is very 90s. And the restaurant owner with her Elaine outfit at first, and then looking like, a certain other brunette character about 4 or 5 seasons from now. Like, oh, hey, you're going to be in that? Okay. That was very, and of course, the amazing mullet from the store owner, from the Nitro owner.
Yeah, I had the store owner, just that entire character written down as most 90s. Just the whole, even getting called, like you just got called out for shoplifting, and, you're going to explain yourself to this store owner who's like, he's not the cops, but he's threatening to call the cops, and he looks like that, and it's just it's pretty funny. It felt very, very 90s.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, most 90s moments. Cindy's wall phone disconnecting throughout the episode. We didn't really mention that, but she kept trying to make calls, and it kept disconnecting her. And Brandon going job hunting pretty much door to door. Those are very 90s.
Yeah. And getting the job postings off of like a cork board.
Yeah, that's what I had. I had Brandon looking for jobs on a bulletin board using a pad and paper. Very 19.
No doubt.
Yeah. Very old school. Very old school. All right. Best hookup. I went with David and Tiffany with the porn shoot.
I actually went with Steve and Tiffany with the waterbed line.
Yeah,
I don't know. I
good
thought
too.
that was good.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll give it to David and Tiffany. It's the closest thing we got to a hookup, right? Other than the past that Steve to, but that's pretty good.
I do give Steve the best quote. Hey Tiff, how's the waterbed? To me,
Mhm.
that was the quote of the episode. It was great.
I have three. I have the Steve hot waterbed. I have Cindy with the Tiffany had shifty eyes, and I had Tiffany saying, "You want to hang out and take the hot tub." This is an amazing line. You want to hang out and take the hot tub? It's just so great. Like so casual.
I'll hand it to Steve for my favorite. He got the line of the show, but I also had as an honorable mention the Brandon's bitchy first boss telling him after she has offered him the job, but he misunderstood and thought that he was getting blown off yet again, saying, "Oh, you don't have to explain. I've been hearing it all day." She snaps back at him, "Hey, babe, I know my restaurateur rights." So I was walking around for half the night saying, "I know my restaurateur rights."
Babe.
In my empty house. Also, Tiffany with the aforementioned, "Oh, they're just dudes who use the premises."
That's it. Just them.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Want to hang out and use a hot tub.
All right, final grade out of 10. For the first two episodes, I went 5.5 on both. And like I mentioned, I felt like this was just a notch below, but still a very good episode. So I went 5 out of 10. I was right in the middle, Tim.
Okay. I think I'll go. Is it cowardly to say 4.5 out of 10?
No, I think it's okay.
Okay.
I'm also going to give it 5 out of 10. I mean, it's very hard to shit on any of season one because it's evident that they
Right.
don't. They're trying to get their feet wet. The writers, the actors, even the physical, like the camera, music, like they're all trying to figure out what the hell they're doing. So I always give season one the benefit of the doubt, even most of season two. But yeah, 5 out of 10 I think is perfectly fine. They used the simple teenage trope of shoplifting, which kind of is an extension of the Walsh family's adapting, or maybe lack of adapting in Cindy's case, to Beverly Hills. You got Brandon, who's like, I'm me. I'm going to act the way I am and raise my sword for the rights of others, even here when nobody gives a shit about anybody but themselves. And then you got Brenda, who doesn't give a shit about anybody but herself and gets caught for it. And then you got Jim, who's just trying to fit in here fiscally, and Cindy, who's looking around going, where the hell is everybody? So I think it's a good Walsh episode. And frankly, I feel like most of season one is about the Walshes.
No, for sure. That was what the show was definitely meant to be.
Yeah,
sure.
Until you realize this ensemble around them is pretty fucking good and get better as time goes on. But so I agree with you, JR. I think 5 out of 10 is a perfect grade.
All right, and real quick, we missed one of the categories. Best lesson learned.
Oh yes.
I kind of had shoplifting there for a minute, but then I think, but I changed it to "there's more than meets the eye." I think that was the end goal, right? Behind all this is kind of everything's not really what it seems at all times. To take a minute and figure out what the truth is.
I like that idea too, but I did say don't shoplift. It seems pretty cut and dry. But I agree with you that you're looking. The shoplifting is just a symbol of the overarching thinking of don't judge a book by its cover, that this girl's not some piece of trash who has no money. She's just bored out of her mind and is an example of what the children of Beverly Hills are probably like at this point. So I agree with you. I think the shoplifting in a bubble is obviously a simple thing to say, but it's an example of the further thinking that, boy, these kids are fucked up.
Yeah.
So
they're also kind of telling the parents to have more faith in their children, which is an interesting lesson for a show like this in 1990, because JT, as you said, Brenda didn't do anything wrong. She just got kind of wrapped up in this, hanging out with this girl who she just met, who she doesn't really know anything about, doesn't know that, she's committed this potential felony. And Cindy is totally has no it's almost like Brenda has no credibility with her mother because of the move and all these external factors. And I mean, she was innocent. So
I also think, Tim, to piggyback your point, it's also as if as if Cindy is like disappointed, like, oh well, Brenda, you feel like Brandon's still Brandon, regardless of the atmosphere or the landscape. Jim's got to do what Jim's doing, but Brenda, it's almost like Cindy looks at her and goes, well, you've settled in quite nicely. You're already a piece of fucking shit. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's Cindy was hoping Brenda could kind of be her kindred spirit.
And it's kind of Cindy projecting a bit because maybe she wants to be that way. Maybe she wants to be fitting in and included. Yeah. And instead she's kind of
so it works both ways. Yeah. Could work both ways.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Listen, our track is real. I'm sorry, go ahead, Tim.
And also, don't work for less than minimum wage, or even hell, these days, don't work for minimum wage. You know, go on.
All right, real quick. We had 4 songs that were, of course, really pretty much cut out on the versions we're watching. Tim, do you want to quickly plug our favorite Instagram page, though?
Yes, of course. As always, check out BH90210 Restored on Instagram, and you'll find this restoration project, dude, going through and taking the scenes from these episodes, all the episodes. I think he's through about part of season 5 now, and representing those with the original songs as they aired at the time. And I don't know that any of these from this episode were in there. And to tell you the truth, like, I can't say I'm overly familiar with most of these songs we're gonna list here, but for the most part, like the big memorable ones are all gonna be in there. And I mean, it's pretty much in order. So you would have to go down, scroll to the bottom of this, Instagram account to get to the early ones from these episodes. But it's a fun little, like, you'll find yourself kind of stopping and getting sucked into oh yeah, that. Oh, I want to hear this again. So it's a fun little diversion if you want to check that out. We are in no way affiliated with that account, but
just enjoy them.
Been a good resource, and always like to give them a shout out.
All right. So the 4 songs noted here were Town Without Pity by Gene Pitney when Brandon's going job hunting. Dirty Cash, Money Talks, The Adventures of Stevie V. That's when they're shopping. MT by Zoppy, which is a cover version that's playing at Tiffany's house when Brenda visits. And Let the Good Times Roll by Louis Jordan and the Timpani 5 when Dylan and Brandon go to the Peach Pit. Of course, we'll hear lots of 50s music at the Peach Pit. That'll be sadly not available to us throughout some of these. Also, Let the Good Times Roll infamously and Beyond the Mat when McFoley's wobbling around with his family on the floor. Yes. All right, so let's do our list real quick. We have character debuts. So we had Tiffany Morgan, we had the restaurant manager, Anna the housekeeper, and Nat Basuccio. And I guess also the Nitro store owner we got to put in here.
Yeah.
As well. Anyone I missed?
At least one of them will be continuing on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tiffany wasn't bad. They should have kept her around.
Not at all. Yeah.
The bad girl kind of thing. All right. We have relationships. I have Brandon and Dylan continuing on. And Brandon and Nat start their kind of early days formatting their relationship.
Yes. Yep. I guess Steve and David continuing their relationship as well.
Yeah, we can put them on there too.
Yeah,
put them
absolutely.
Don't know that that's
now that they're together without being forced. I think it's official. Yeah.
I mean, are they really gonna have a breakup? Not too much.
No, yeah,
they're gonna be a solid unit.
So they might be the most long-lasting couple on the show.
I think so. Yeah.
All right. Places and things. Key debuts. We have Look Good Restaurant, the Nitro Store, and the Peach Pit. Anything I missed there?
I think that covers it.
No, that's all of them.
Yeah, the Walsh's Murder Den, of course.
Yeah. Well, we already had the house, right? So it's kind of it's part of it. All right. Let's do our character rank. So what we do is we rank them. As the last episode was out of the top 11, it'll be top 12 now because we have to include Nat, and they get assigned points in reverse order. So the top person gets 11 points. Well, it'll be 12 now, and all the way down to the bottom, we're going to do an aggregate scoring. So here's our total scores heading into. Well, actually, we'll save that. Okay. So I guess here's our
this ranks. Episode.
Yeah, here's our ranks. Oh yeah, let's do this episode. Okay, let's do it, and then we'll do the overall. All right. So was it just for this episode, or was it? It's building, right?
We can do kind of how we're feeling after this episode as well.
All right, so I still have Brandon number 1 for me.
That makes sense to me.
Scott?
Yeah. I mean, he's, he stands out. He does the right thing like he always does.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right, I have Dylan number 2 still.
Hard to argue. I mean,
he was in so little, and he was so great in that little screen time he had.
I got to go with Steve.
There you go. Well, we outvote. So 2-1. We'll go
Damn
Dylan.
it. I won't argue with Dylan anyway, but yeah.
So I have Brenda 3, and Scott, obviously, I don't know where you at. You have Steve above Brenda, obviously, but
no, I would, but I would have Brenda. Well, I guess I had Brenda at 4 because I would have had Dylan at 3. So.
All right. What do you have here, Tim? I thought Brenda was a fan of this and is improving.
I was going to say, on the strength of this episode, you could maybe swap Brenda and Dylan for me, but I'm not really going to fight. I don't think it's strong enough to really make a passionate argument about.
And this kind of follows with what we had last episode too. We had Brandon, Dylan, Brenda as our top 3. Now that's where I deviate a little bit. I had Steve 4 previously, but I thought Cindy outworked him in this episode. I had Cindy. I
had Cindy very high in this episode also. I mean, for this episode alone, she would have been like my number 2. So yeah, I kind of agree with that.
Yeah. Any serious qualms there, Scott? You're okay with Cindy?
No, not at all. Nope.
Okay, this is where I had Steve at 5 now.
I mean, let's face it, she's not going to be up there for very long, so let's let her have it.
Yeah.
You good with Steve at 5, Tim?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. And then I had David still at 6, working the camera, got the nude video of Tiffany, worked out well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then I had Kelly, then Jim. Any issue there? Would you guys have Jim of Kelly coming out of this one? I thought the creepy couch scene kind of turned me off. As good as the 10K line was, this one, the couch was a little off-putting.
I mean, Kelly's Kelly's iconically in the opening now with that with the bed flip. Yeah. So, yeah, I would put Kelly above Jim in this one.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, Jim missed some episodes. This is really the first episode where he gets any significant screen time since the pilot. And even still, I mean, it's kind of not all that much. It's more of a Cindy episode than a Jim episode, really, as far as the Elder Walshes. So yeah, I'm not gonna fight for that. I'm not gonna fight for Jim in this case.
All right, I kept Andrea and Scott next, and then I put Nat above Donna in my Rex. Donna last still.
Right. Yeah. That's fine.
I could see that. Sure.
Boy, Andrea's barely in this one, huh?
I don't think she was at all.
No, she walks. She is. She walks by a couple students and then runs into Brandon while he's at the bulletin board.
Right.
That's right.
And that's pretty much it, I think.
All right, so Brandon continues to pile up his commanding lead. So he is at now 33. All right, well, I do the math. Tim, you just want to kind of give a plug of where we can find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on social media. I am at Cyke68, CYKE68 on the Twitter. If you want to talk about this show, I'd be more than happy to engage any time or place over 90210, one of my all-time fave shows from the 90s or any decade, really. And, I do a variety of podcasts as well across some of our other sister feeds. But I think that'll do it for my purposes. How's that math coming along?
Still working. Scott, why don't you tell us where we can find you?
All right. Well, you can find me on Twitter at PTBPodfather. You could follow one of our other exceptional podcast feeds, the PTB Wrestling Network, on Twitter at PTBN Wrestling. And yeah, I'll engage. I'll talk about this show. To me, it's my personal favorite show of the 90s. So I'll talk about and a top 3 all time. So I'll talk about it anytime. Nat, Steve, waterbeds, hot chicks on diving boards. Fine with me.
It's tough, between this and Melrose Place for me. I always have these internal debates, like which show had the highest peak, which had the lowest low, like which was more consistent. And I'm never really sure where I land, but I always have 90210 and Melrose Place neck and neck as far as the primetime network dramas go. But great decade for television. That's high praise coming from you, Scott, that this is your favorite of the decade of all time. Hell.
Yep, absolutely. I can watch anytime, any place.
Here's our overall rankings after 3 episodes. In last place, 12th place is Nat with 2. In 11th place, Donna Martin with 3 points. So Donna, after 3 episodes, barely had a Nat, who just had his one appearance. 10th place, Scott Scanlon with 9. In 8th place, I gave Jim Walsh a tiebreaker with 9 over Scott.
Yeah.
Then we have Andrea Zuckerman with 13 points, Kelly Taylor with 17 points, Cindy Walsh now in the top 6 with 19 points, Dylan at 21, and of course he wasn't even in the first episode, so he's getting seen quickly. Just 1 behind David Silver, who's at 22. Our top 3, Steve Sanders now into 3rd with 25 points. 1 point below Brenda Walsh at 26, and Brandon continues his dominance at 33 points. So we'll see if anyone ever catches him, if anyone has a shot. He is running away early with the ranks here. So listen, hopefully everyone enjoyed this episode of 90210. So spread the word if you're a 90210 fan. Also, if you're a fan and you like doing podcasts or want to try it, reach out to me on social media at JT the Pod Guy, or wherever you see this posted, just comment on it, and I can add you to the guest list because we are rotating, looking for anyone who's interested, anyone who loves 90210. If you hate 90210, if you've never seen 90210, and you want to do the show, you are welcome to be on. Just hit me up, and we'll get you worked in. So for Scott, for Tim, I'm JT. We're out. Little dim sum, little den sum. We'll talk to you next time.